And welcome everybody to episode 54 of the CYBR.SEC.CAST. This looks a little different because this is also episode 1 of the CYBR.HAK.CAST. Number one, first one. So yeah, we're doing stuff a little bit different. Sam's not here. That's okay. I think he's okay with it. I haven't actually asked him, so hopefully he's not mad that we're recording this by ourselves. So joining me is co-host to CYBR.HAK.CAST, Phil Wylie. How you doing, Phil?
Good. How are you?
I'm good, man. I'm good.
Yeah, I'm excited to be collaborating with you on a podcast.
Yeah, that was a 25-cent word. Don't stutter too much. Can't use those big words on here. Yeah, I'm excited too as well, man. There's a lot behind this story of why we're doing this podcast. We'll get into that throughout the show, but yeah, really excited. Phil, as you can tell, if he had facial hair, would be a brother from another mother. Maybe I should just shave and we can pull it. Yeah, no, Len's saying don't shave. Okay.
Friends don't let friends shave.
There you go. Well, it is Movember or whatever, no shave November. So as you can see, also joining us for episode 1, honored guest, Len Noe. How you doing, Len?
Hey, what's happening, gentlemen? Great to be here. Honored to be episode number 1. Honored. Thank you.
Yep. Len is
happy to be here.
Len is a friend of the show, friend of Phil and I. We've known him for a while. I've been on a few podcasts with him. So is Phil. Len is Divergent Research Engineer at CWPensec. I'm happy to have him on here. We're going to be talking about stuff we're doing with Len as well. Pretty excited about that. But before we do all that, let's talk a little bit about why we're doing this show. And we're going to talk about the conference behind it. So Phil, what's the conference that we got coming up, man?
Sure. It's CYBR.HAK.CON. And the inspiration was HAK.CAST this year. I was at HAK.CAST. I stepped down from the DEF CON group that I started and was running in Denton, Texas last fall. When I stepped down, I thought, maybe I'll do something different. Maybe I'll do a conference in a HAK.CON. I thought, yeah, I'd like to start a hacker conference because in the DFW, the closest thing we have to it is our B-Sides DFW. Everything else is CISO conferences or vendor heavy conferences. So I saw the need for a hacker conference, and I texted Michael just to share the news about what I was wanting to do. And he said, let's have a call. And so he discussed partnering. So I'm beyond excited to be collaborating with Michael and the whole CyberSec crew.
Yeah, I'm so excited to have you, man. So the CyberSec community, obviously we've got what was HUSECCon, now CyberSecCon. We've got an OT conference. We've done executive stuff. We've got a user group. And when Phil said he wanted to do this, I said, well, I don't want to advise you, man. I want to work with you. Let's make this thing happen. So super stoked that he came on. We're going to be doing that on St. Patty's Day, actually, next year, which should be a lot of fun. So we've got tickets are on sale.
Time out.
What?
St. Patrick's Day?
Yeah.
And you think people are going to go to a conference and remember anything?
Well, we're not going to have green beer waiting for everybody. So maybe after party, people can get a little drunk. But for this one, I think it'll be okay. So,
well, I'll be there.
Well, good. Yeah. So yeah, St. Patty's Day, we're excited about it. I'm Scotch Irish, so I'm gonna have a good time with it. We've got that happening. We've got the CFP, which is starting January 19th, ending February 1st. This is our first year, Phil, so we don't have a whole lot of room, right?
Yeah. We got some great invited speakers, but we do have some room for some folks on the CFP. So we're looking for technical talks. We call it a hacker conference, but it's a practitioner conference. Yeah. So you have a good IR malware reversing type of talk. That's the kind of stuff we're looking for.
Yep. Yeah, I'm really excited about getting deep into the weeds on that. Like we do at CyberSecCon, we have a deep tech track, but that's all it's going to be with this one is deep tech. So excited about that. But get those when that CFP opens, we'll put out info on it. Make sure you get in there and get your talk in quick. because you're only going to have a couple of weeks. Like I said, it's our first year. We're not going to have a ton of open space, but we do want people to submit, and we can have some fun with that, pick out some really great talks. So we've got VIP tickets and regular tickets. VIP tickets are going to have some cool stuff. We'll put all that information out there. We've got sponsorships available right now as well. All of that stuff is up on the site, CYBR.HAK.CON. Remember, it's cyber without an E because we're cool. We don't want to include the E. I don't know, just some kind of marketing fun. We're probably confusing everybody to death, but that's okay. I do remember a previous employer of yours, Len, had a hat that just had CYBR on it. Sonic's got one. It looks really cool. So I was like, well, we're not totally original. It was a pretty cool hat, though. So
Yeah,
it was all right. It was all right. All right. Well, that's everything happening with CYBR.HAK.CON. That is the inspiration for CYBR.HAK.CAST. So we can do the same stuff we do over at CYBR.SEC.CAST, which is talk to all of our speakers, talk to really cool people, talk to deep technical people on this podcast. Have a good time with it. I'm excited about doing this more. So now, Len, we get to talk about something we're doing with you.
Oh yeah, this is going to be a lot of fun.
Yep. So people down here in Houston, and there's a few people that come from out of town when they're in town, they come see us. We've got the previously called the HSC user group. Now we've got the CSC user group. So we have a holiday party every year with that, and we try to bring everybody in to do something fun. So last year we did Cidercade, where everybody got to drink cider and play video games, and that was a lot of fun. This year, we're going to get with Len. We're going to do a screening of I Am Machine, his documentary that launched out at DEF CON. We're going to be doing that on December 17th at the Regal Edwards Houston Marquee. That's out on Katy Freeway. Len, give us a quick run through of the documentary. And I hear also you might have an exclusive for us. You can follow up with that.
The documentary, it's basically, I've been asked this same question numerous times since it was released, and every time I'm like, I haven't been able to give the same answer. The documentary is kind of like a snapshot into my life, and what it actually is, what basically drove me to become the transhuman cyborg hacker that I am. I will say that it's very raw, and it's very, very vulnerable. I mean, there's a lot of the dialogue is between Chris Glandon from Barcode and my father, and it's, I never really had the opportunity when I was growing up to really give it much thought, but what it must have been like to be a parent of somebody like me going through doing, criminality, black hat stuff, just doing all the crazy stuff that I did, and for me, I was just living it. But to actually sit back and listen to my father and what it was like to try and raise me gave me a whole new appreciation for the crap that I put them through. Also, one of the highlights of the film is you wouldn't believe how many times, Michael, that people have asked me, like, well, what's it like to get an implant? What's the process? What do you do? We were actually able to convince my mechanic, Pineapple Tangora, over at Shaman Modification here in Austin, to agree to let us film the last implant that I actually had put in, which is a Java dev card that is blockchain compatible and FIPS compliant. So we actually have that. So you'll actually get to see what it actually takes to become transhuman. And, as much as everybody was cringing in Vegas, the whole procedure takes less than 25 seconds. So it's not really it's not a horror movie. The film has actually already been selected to 2 film festivals, and we still have a ton more that we've submitted to. So we're just racking up those laurels. And, we've shown the film 5 times so far at different private screenings, and I couldn't tell you, I don't think I could be any more happy that, I'm getting to work with CYBR.SEC.CON, because the truth is I love HUSECCon. and unfortunately, due to my own travel schedule, I haven't been able to make it the last 2 years. So it feels really good to come back to Houston and to spend time with you and your wonderful organization. And as far as the exclusive that I was going to give you guys, I just, everybody should be pretty well aware by this point that I had written my first book for Wylie Press that was released a year ago, October, Human Hacked: My Life and Lessons as the World's First Augmented Ethical Hacker. Well, I just finished writing my first fiction novel. It's currently titled Regenerating Eve, and it's basically a modern play on Frankenstein utilizing CRISPR technology, gene editing therapy, machine learning, AI, and honestly, there's a little bit of synthetic identity in there. If you caught my talk that I did at CYBR.HAK.CON a few years ago. So we just went into the editing process, and we should be ready within 6 months. So if we, depending on how quick we can do it, we might be able to have it ready for the event in February on St. Patty's.
Sounds like a book signing to me, Phil. What do you think?
Yeah, I think it'd be the ideal book signing.
Come on,
I'll bring
Len.
both.
Push them to get it done. we can get somebody to get it done. That'll be awesome, man. Well, that's exciting. Thanks for announcing that here, man. I'm really
awesome.
My pleasure.
Wow. Well, there's your exclusive, everybody. We got a new cool book coming out from Len. All right. Well, we're going to take a quick break, and on the other side, we're going to have a couple of discussion topics. We're going to go over an article. We're going to go over Phil and I's recent trip to B-Sides DFW and some talks we saw there. And then we're going to let Len pontificate a little bit on state of cyber. That should be an interesting discussion. We'll probably make some people mad, but that's okay. I'm glad to do it. So let's have fun on the other side of the break. And we are back. So I wanted to talk about this article that I found on Dark Reading that was about a truffle net attack. So Truffle Hog, if anybody's familiar with it, it's it's open source, but it's a well-known tool that a lot of people use to pull credentials, find credentials. You can do some automation with it where it'll go out and whatever credentials it finds, it can do some automated checking of those. Oh, there we go.
It's a secret.
So it grabs those secrets, pulls the stuff up, and tries to do some automated checking of it to see if it's real. It's a useful tool. A lot of people use it to check their environments, make sure their credentials aren't getting leaked, all that good stuff. Typical tool. So now we got some attackers abusing that, and they're using it to grab credentials, as many as they can find. And then they're taking that and rolling it into Amazon simple email service. So they're basically taking those credentials, checking them against AWS, seeing if there's some legit credentials that they can get into people's AWS instances. And then if they can get in there, then they do some automation to check and see if they've got simple email service turned on. And then if they've got simple email service turned on and it's working where they can send out stuff, then they start using that for BEC attacks, so business email compromise attacks. And the crazy thing about it is if you're sending that from legitimate simple email service or SES on AWS, you're sending that within the cloud, that's going to get through a lot of checks, a lot of security checks and emails. It's going to plow right through it because it's going to look like it's coming from legitimate domains, because it actually is coming from legitimate domains. And thought this was really interesting because they've got activity from more than 800 unique hosts across 57 distinct Class C networks. You're seeing these attacks coming from. So obviously somebody's done some pretty good sniffing and snorting using Truffle Hog to find that. And so now they're calling it Truffle Net, of course, which kind of makes sense. So thought it was we all want to say things are cool without saying they should do those things. But I thought it was a pretty cool attack using a legitimate tool, which happens a lot anyway. How many hackers out there or attackers are using legitimate tools that have been developed by the good guys? Happens all the time anyway. So I don't know, Phil, you got any thoughts on this attack as a pen tester?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because people are having to get more creative because working as a pen tester is getting harder and harder to get a foothold. So sometimes trying to send phishing emails, if you didn't get your squatted domain or doppelganger domain soon enough, it may show up in whatever email security tools you're using. So people are having to get more creative, and that's even like the endpoint detection systems internally are getting better about catching stuff. So people are having to get more creative. So it's really kind of interesting to see what they did with that attack.
What do you think about it, Len?
Well, I wanted to just kind of touch real quickly on one of the things that you said. And I think Phil being, the hacker maker can definitely, attest to this. I think the best hacking tools are not actually auditing tools. Take a look at, Benjamin Delpy and Mimikatz. Auditing tools are the best hacking tools because they're expected to be used to find vulnerabilities and correct them. But the one thing that I would say is, I've been using TruffleHog since it was basically just sniffing dorks. So to see how people are being able to leverage AI and, the automation portion of this, I think it's amazing, the evolution. But it also just kind of opens my eyes to the fact that it doesn't matter what we do. This is the type of thing that I think we're going to be seeing more and more of as automations start coming into play. I think we're going to start seeing more and more legitimate auditing tools being repurposed and added into workflows.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
I mean, if the tool's there, you got it written, you don't have to do anything extra with it. I mean, how many people have used, I mean, it's not an auditing, I guess it could be considered as what it's written for, but just basic Kali Linux and all the tools that are built into that. I'll talk about it a little bit, but there was a talk at B-Sides DFW. Actually, I can just kind of talk about it now as part of this. It's a talk at B-Sides DFW what was his name? Jason Hyde put on. It was all about Sliver command and control. That's a legitimate tool that was made, but it's got a massive amount of different tools in it. I'd say they're all built into it. I'd say the only probably good thing when attackers use auditing tools and tools that were written by the good guys to test things was that most of the time those are included at the very least in some kind of signature base, like an AV signature or something. So that it's there in your environment. So that's generally going to come by default. It's a known tool. So you can go in and whitelist that in your environment so you can legitimately test. But once you've got done with a pen test, you turn that, hopefully you flip that bit back and you don't have that whitelisted anymore. And then it becomes a little bit more difficult for a typical attacker, at least in environments that are doing it right, to stop that. So I think that's kind of your positive to it, if that makes sense.
I think another positive is getting people to think outside the box. More of the defenders of the offensive security professionals that are doing this to defend environments is to learn from what the threat actors do to implement it internally, how they can test against these type of attacks. So hopefully they can, patch whatever vulnerabilities to prevent, the bad guys from using it.
And one last thing, TruffleHog by and large is not going out hacking things. It's actually, as we said, it's an auditing tool. So I think one of the other points that we really need to make is if you're doing your job correctly, this tool's not going to find anything.
Well, I mean, that it's a strong point because this is all finding credentials, looking for credentials that are somehow somebody's lost them. So they've gone out into GitHub repos or whatever and found those.
They're published into some type of public repository.
Yeah. So you're able to go grab them and then use them automatically. If people wouldn't do things like that, I mean, use the old trope, people are the weakest link. It is what it is. It's going to happen. But.
And also to add to that is, you said before the break, we're probably going to piss some people off today. And I figure now's a good enough time to start. You know, to me, truffle hog and just, you know, dorks, Google dorking in general, these are things that, in my opinion, this is not hacking. This is basically poor data management on the part of the data owner. And there comes a point where I think individual responsibility and corporate responsibility for your data needs to start coming to the front of mind. And we need to stop accepting the fact that to leak credentials is just the cost of doing business.
You're saying credentials getting leaked is a cost, or it's
No, I'm saying we need to stop accepting the fact that, you know, yeah, we're going to publish this and, you know, some of them are going to get out there. We need to stop accepting that and actually take some accountability for the fact that, you know, we're given these credentials, we're given access to this privileged information. We need to respect it and treat it as if it was, you know, our own, even if it's for our companies, because at the end of the day, if the company goes down, you don't have a job either. But we need to stop accepting that this is just the cost of doing business, is that, you know, this is going to happen. Leaks to me are the worst thing in the world, because at the end of the day, it all comes down to negligence or lack of preparation or lack of responsibility, in my opinion.
Yep. I don't disagree with that. I mean, I do think making it easier for somebody is, you know, something you shouldn't be doing. And this definitely is going to make it easy, especially when we've got tools out here that are going to be able to take advantage of it, that are written for legitimate purposes. So yeah, frustrating. I get it. I don't think that's pissing anybody off. If anybody's pissed off by that, then they should check themselves.
Wait 5 minutes and I was going to say, wait 5 minutes and we'll have new things to piss them off.
Yeah.
If they get pissed off, it's probably people that abuses the risk acceptance.
Oh, absolutely.
You talked about that at B-Sides DFW, didn't you? There was something that got risk accepted. That was that you?
Yeah,
That was
yeah. As a pen test I was doing one time, the kind of the inspiration behind my license plate, because I was doing a pen test, and through a web app pen test, external web app pen test, I was able to get command line access because they had XP command shell enabled. I was able to dump the password hashes. The admin password was password all lowercase and the number 1. And I cracked that with John the Ripper. I guess Hashcat had been out at that point. I just hadn't started learning it yet. That was back in 2014. And so I turned in the pen test report, and they said, oh, this is a development environment. We're going to file a risk acceptance. So.
And your take was, yeah, did that password 1 make it to all your production systems too?
Yeah. It was probably used across all the production systems. I was able to get in from the internet internally. And yeah, it just blows my mind sometimes.
All right. Well,
machine guns in the hands of children.
It's yeah, this one that's bad stuff. Well, all right. Well, let's jump into B-Sides DFW, because had a good time there. You mentioned it earlier, Phil, that it's pretty much, I mean, it is like a hacker con up there. It's legit. There's people doing all kinds of cool stuff. You got your pick and locks, you got your soldering room, but all the talks that I saw were pretty technical, maybe with the exception of one, but it still had good. It was like GRC stuff, but it also had some stuff to do with practical security and comparing the two. So it had some technical aspects to it. But I know you said you had a Signal talk, something about Signal that you went to. I wanted to see what your take on that one was.
Sure. The one I attended was Signal Proxy, a cautionary tale of potential unintended consequences. And their use case or why, Signal isn't always secure was that people were using, like journalists and people within Iran were using this for secure communications, and the nation state was blocking the state was blocking these type of communications. And Signal came back and said, well, you can use there's like a domain out there that's signal.tube that they could use. And the speaker brought up some good points that, the nation state, all they had to do, or Iran, all they had to do is do some research. They could find these domains, block the domains. So it was making it, the more layers that you added to it was a little more difficult for them to capture. And one of the things they were bringing up was like certificate security, but then the certificates, you're able to pull information from it. So they're able to look at the certs and see that it's Signal cert. So a lot of these things that Signal said they had in place to keep it secure were just kind of things to kind of slow them down. But essentially, once they went through, did their research, they'd be able to block it regardless.
Well, I was about to just my 2 cents on this, and I wasn't there for the talk, but they're a nation state. If they can block one domain, you
Yeah.
know, you're looking at it from a let's just stop them. I'm thinking, black hat style, and it's like, why not just change the DNS and point it to a clone, and then I'll run you through my proxy and see every darn thing that you've got.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was more concerned about, was just getting in the middle of that communication stream somehow, and then seeing how you could find out even more info on anybody who was trying to fight back against the government there. And that's scary. Yeah, blocking at one thing. I mean, you can play the shell game all day and try to figure out how to get around this, how to get around that. And I like the idea that Signal was providing a lot of that ability to get around some of that stuff. But yeah, they're just playing whack-a-mole, I guess, at that point. I'm
And to
way
be
more.
honest, if you're dealing with an oppressive regime, you said Iran, they would not be opposed to basically setting up a man in the middle proxy and just letting you do it just so that they could get the information.
Yeah. And that's that back to your thoughts on that, Len, is whenever you're the nation, you control the infrastructure. It's going to be it can be kind of difficult for people to get around that.
I mean, it's the technology golden rule. Whoever has the gold makes the rules.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the only way around that is, you keep pushing on this from an infrastructure perspective, is do stuff by satellite. I think that's getting more, but then you've got to get the devices into the area to be able to even connect to those in the first place. So you've got to get around that. There's all those restrictions. Yeah, it's just, you're just fighting a game at that point. Who can move faster? And nation states have the resources generally to move a lot faster than a group of people trying to fight against an oppressive regime. It's unfortunate, but.
And to that point, I wish them all the best of luck, but there's got to be better ways in the long run.
Yeah. Satellite phone,
I mean, hey,
that kind of stuff. It's
Laura,
all, you still got to get it all in there. I mean, how do you get access to this stuff?
At that point, what about LoRa? Long distance, low frequency. I mean, there's options, but
Yep.
all the best of luck to anybody that's fighting, oppression and trying to go up against a nation state is hats off to you and God bless.
Yeah. Not
And I
easy.
think one of the big limiting factors is taking in consideration a lot of these people probably aren't super technical, and folks that aren't super technical, I can use Signal or whatever, and
Yeah.
they aren't tech savvy enough to try these different types of backups that they could try to alternative solutions.
A good point. Well, so you had that one. I'd already talked about the Sliver C2 talk by Jason. That was a good talk. Really good detail. I also listened to or watched the pen testing. Is pen testing in OT worth it? That was by Dennis Dissler over at Anaxi. He's the CEO and founder over there. Thought that was a good talk. I'm always interested in OT stuff. In the operational technology and industrial space, something being down in Houston, kind of near and dear to my heart. And there wasn't anything, the talk was good. I don't want anybody to take away that the talk wasn't good. The talk was good. He did a really good job with it, obviously very experienced with it. What I always find interesting is when somebody who knows the OT space comes in and talks to a crowd that doesn't know OT very well. They're typical IT folks. And that actually happened back in a couple of years ago when I came up to the North Texas ISSA. I was on a panel, or actually moderated a panel that was about OT security, and everybody in the room, with the exception of like two people, were all IT people. And one of the panelists asked them why they were in the room. And they said because they wanted to learn about OT. And I thought that was really cool, because a lot of the IT people in there, what they found out is that they've got OT in their environment and they had no idea they have OT in their environment. Manufacturers, things like that, they don't know about what's on the floor. They just provide them the Ethernet and you go do what you got to do. And they don't know about all the other details and how that's core to their business. So Dennis talked about a scenario that was fictitious but inspired by true events, and it was he had a pen tester or a customer go ask him to do pen testing in an OT environment. Dennis came back with 4 weeks in length and however much money it was, and the guy was like, "There's no way. I've got this other guy who's going to do it in a week," and he was just throwing a box in the network and plugging it in, and all of a sudden they had a bunch of their industrial control equipment start having problems and freaking out, and the plant operator lost his mind and was like, "You get this stuff unplugged," and they basically all they got was like 2 hours worth of nmap scans, and that was all that was in the report. And it was absolutely useless, and it obviously wasn't taken into consideration the fragility of that environment. So then Dennis's guy came back in. They finally accepted, hey, we got to do this the right way. They did it low and slow. They did it where it wouldn't, not from an evasion perspective, but just taking into consideration the fragility of that OT equipment. And they got a ton more info out of it. They did that for 2 to 3 weeks, gave them a great report, found a bunch of stuff in their environment that they had no idea was even there. So it again, very typical. This is what happens. I've seen this many times in OT environments when you're trying to do this. But it was good for people in the room to hear about that and to get some perspective on how these environments work. So I don't know if either one of you have OT experience there. I know, Phil, you've got some. You've worked for a company that did that. Len, I don't know about your background, but if y'all have any thoughts on it.
Worked for Ingersoll. I was actually a system administrator at Ingersoll Rand's assembly line production plant.
There you go. Well, you know what those are like then. You know that manufacturing.
Oh,
yeah. On top of working for the company that had the OT solution, I used to work for a large global consumer product company, and security wise, they wouldn't let us in their environment. It's very understandable too. As you kind of mentioned, breaking things, there's always the risk of injury or loss of production.
Mm-hmm.
And the people that run those environments have had such a bad experience. They don't want anyone coming in and touching those environments. They don't really want to trust anyone to do that.
Yeah. Well, that was one of the big things he talked about was loss of production, because they all of a sudden they had like a whole day where they had to go in and retool stuff, and it caused them a bunch of problems. I think it was like a chemical manufacturer, so they lost a ton of production that day. A lot of money.
That to that point, when I worked back in at Ingersoll, many moons ago, you hit the nail right on the head. There's always been this great divide between what we would call the shop floor and the office. And, unfortunately, I wish there was a way to get the OT administrators and the people that are working out on the shop floors with PLC controllers, things like that, to realize that these are computers. And, unfortunately, we just haven't been able to bridge that divide. And to this day, I love the fact that we're starting to see more OT talks. But unfortunately, the people that are listening to them are not necessarily, in my opinion, the ones that are able to make the changes that need to be made.
Yeah, I agree with that. There's a lot of folks that aren't. It's a lot of it comes down to manufacturers. I am seeing some little bit of bright spots here and there where the manufacturers are getting up to speed. They're starting to figure out that they need to be more secure. There's been a lot of work around protocols that are native ICS OT protocols that are starting to get at least the wrappers around them to get them more secure. You're actually starting to see manufacturers buy some of these security companies, these OT visibility companies. Interesting kind of a trend, I guess. So you're starting to see some of that, but it's still so much debt in those environments, technical debt, to get them back or get them to a point where they need to be. The key point that he made, I thought, in regards to that was that, we measure in IT time of an asset and how long it needs to be in an environment, generally 3 to 5 years, maybe in rare instances a little bit more, but that's generally 3 to 5 years. And they measure that time of assets, age of assets in decades. I mean, literally decades. And they do that to even equipment that should not be measured in such a way. So because he had there was like a Dell Optiplex or desktop or something that was from like 1998 still in this environment running Windows 95. I mean, we all hear about that, but when you actually see it, it's like, good gracious. And this thing had been around forever. And they're like, well, if we change that, then we've got to change everything up the line and down the line, and it requires a retooling. It could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars just to replace one small PC. So it's just maddening how that works. But
I have seen more end of life software in OT than I've ever seen anywhere else.
Yep, I agree. All right. Well, those were the 2 or 3 talks at B-Sides DFW. Thanks for all of the organizers up there for putting that on. That was it was a good time. A lot of good people. Obviously, a lot of passionate people in that at that conference, and obviously the B-Sides stuff as we all support because we love what they do at a grassroots level. So now, this is when we're really going to piss people off. I think we're going to see what Len has to say. I'm going to give him an open mic, and I'm really scared for our first show. We might get canceled right out of the gate, Phil. Let's see what happens. But we can always edit this, Lauren.
Oh, no edits allowed. No edits allowed. No, Phillip, if anybody doesn't know much about Phillip, then you've been living under a rock for at least the last decade. And Michael has been around probably nearly as long. So I feel like I'm in good company when I ask this question. I have been having some conversations recently with a lot of other colleagues, and I'm one of the few people that's come out and said it. And I would love to get your guys' opinion on it. I question the validity of our industry over the course of the next 3 to 5 years, not from a need perspective, but from a knee-jerk reaction perspective of executives. I don't know if you guys have seen that all of the Meta is laying off thousands of AI engineers. We've seen the inclusion or the elevated valuation of AI automations and workflows, especially around cybersecurity. And I can tell you with complete certainty, I know of at least 15 people that have been in this industry for over at least a decade or more, and the jobs are not there like they used to be. And even on top of that, I saw for the first time the other day, and I don't know if you guys have seen this, I saw my first ethical hacking AI integrated certification. It was hacking with AI cert. So what does that do to all of us that are left here? In my opinion, we're seeing a decline in base knowledge of cybersecurity professionals. I see more of a dependence on LLMs and automations and AI tools. But at the same time, I don't feel that they necessarily have the fundamental knowledge of why they're doing what the AI is telling them. And from a larger perspective, I think that points out what, in my opinion, is one of the biggest problems we have with AI, which is just the blind devotion without question. So where does that leave all of us as we move forward? We're at the tail end. Everybody's closing down Q4 for 2025, 2026. The projections are just more AI, more AI, more AI. And where does that leave all of us?
Phil, you're the hacker maker, man.
Sure.
What do you think?
Well, I've worked for a company that automated pen testing. They had some AI when I was there. It wasn't that much, but you see a lot of AI products out there. But one of the experiences I like to go back to was this mortgage company. I used to work for a mortgage company, worked there for 14 years, and it all boils down to efficiency. So they brought in these efficiency experts one time. They come through,
the Bobs.
So they come in. Yeah. So they came in and sat with the people in the mortgage processing groups, sat there with them for weeks, took note of how they did all this stuff, turned in the recommendations. and then a bunch of people got laid off. But the thing that happened is these recommendations were kind of a little bit aggressive on the layoff. So they had to bring these people back because they hadn't planned properly. And I see this happening with AI. I think some people, to go back to one terms you mentioned, knee jerk, is they're going to come up and say, hey, we can automate this stuff. Management, CISOs, and all this, the board, they hear about AI, what it can do, and they think about this cost savings because he's looking at, Amazon and all these other companies laying off all these people. But I think it's kind of a mistake. I think you should use AI. And one of my favorite quotes is, you won't be replaced by AI, you'll be replaced by someone using AI. As a security professional, we really need to understand how to do this, because the business is going to want AI. We need to be skilled so we can help them do it safely, because I think AI is a good thing, but my biggest worry is people throwing it in without really properly looking at it, installing it securely, and making sure you got guardrails. Because some people, because back to my IT days and early security days, management always wanted to throw these apps in really quick. They would move locations or try to consolidate locations. They wouldn't get big enough WAN connections to communicate between offices, and it ended up causing a lot of headaches. So we really have to take the time to do it right, educate people on it. And this even goes into security awareness for the end users, even showing them how to use AI properly and securely, because the better they can use the tool. I mean, it's just like a knife. If you're going to carve something, if you know how to use it safely, you're not going to hurt yourself. But you just throw someone a knife, they're going to cut their finger off. So you really need to teach them how to use this stuff properly to kind of head off some of the risks at the past. You're still going to have some, but I think it will reduce some of the risks.
Yeah. My take on this is that we've been seeing the dumbing down of security professionals, people trying to get into it for a while. I'm going to sound a little bit like the, get off my lawn old man here, but I still.
What's wrong with that?
I mean, for the young people, they probably hate it, but I think we're all old, right?
Yeah.
I absolutely. I mean, I had this discussion with a friend and Phil met him at B-Sides. I won't say his name on here because he didn't give me permission, but we had this discussion about how all of us older folks generally came into cybersecurity through a different path. That was through networking or whatever. And what we had was a bunch of universities that looked at this job, and not just universities, also like certification bodies and stuff like that. And again, not naming anybody, but or any organizations or any universities, but they looked at this and go, most of them started out as legit, trying to get people educated and get them into the industry. And what they started becoming is, what in any organization that gets created, is its main purpose eventually becomes its own existence, maintaining its own existence. And that's not, nefarious. That's every organization. You have to think like that to some degree. And what they saw was that in order for us to maintain this, we've got to get more and more people in the industry. We have to start making the certifications less difficult. There was one certification that used to require you to do a practical and take a test and do all of these things. And they finally just said, oh, we're just going to make people take a test. And it was a really, really well-known certification, and it got dumbed down. And that's happened in a lot of places. And in schools, what they did was like, oh, we can get all of these young people out of high school and promise them, like they've been doing, I'm sorry, for generations with all kinds of different jobs, you can come out making 50, 60, 75, $100,000, $150,000 a year just by getting a cybersecurity certification. And where do they start? Most of them as a cybersecurity analyst. That is not where you want to start in cyber.
I got a nephew.
What's that?
To your point, my nephew, who is my little apprentice, because Sith, we have apprentices, and when he was like, I want to be like you, Uncle Len, when I grow up, and he learned Linux before he learned Windows, and when he actually got to the point where he was doing training, and he compromised his first Windows box, he's like, I'm in, and I'm like, all right, so what do you do now? And he's like, I don't know.
What do I do with it? Yeah.
Yeah, it's like you're in, you don't.
If you don't know what how to move laterally in an organization once you're in there, because you don't know how networking works. You're just in that box. You don't know what to do. That's why I think that dumbing down, and that's not to be pejorative or say anybody's dumb. It's just that they've given what they consider the easiest path into cybersecurity was through this analyst role where you're going to work in a SOC and you're going to look for like yeah, you can look at certain things and do certain tasks, but to your point, when you combine those tasks that people are going to do repetitively over and over and over again, you bring in automation to make that more efficient. Then you bring in AI and the agents to make that even more efficient and help it to actually make decisions for you, whereas automation couldn't really make decisions other than, just a yes no type of flow. Then you're going to get what you're talking about. I think I've listened to Daniel Miessler talk about this a lot. I've listened to a lot of other people talk about this. I'm of the opinion that we're going to adjust just like a lot of other areas will adjust, but I do think it's going to be painful. It already is painful. I've seen a lot of people having problems, to your point, Len, getting a job. I've also seen people get a job within 2 weeks. I think a lot of that's luck of the draw too, like it always is. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's a hard one to figure out.
The one caveat that I wanted to point out on the tail end of that original statement is the fact that without being too overly personal, I think it's safe to say that we're all well over the ages of 40 on this call, which means that we're closer to retirement than we are and anything else. And, to your point, all of us with all that old school tribal knowledge, we are starting to age out on top of things. So at least right now, we still have the ability to impart this wisdom and knowledge and experience onto the next generation. But the time is actually, if you look at it, running out for us to be able to do this.
Well, I think that's a big reason why Phil does what he does. I mean, Phil had a great interaction at B-Sides DFW this weekend with a young man who came up to him and told him that he got courage from what Phil's doing. I don't know if you want to share that story or not, Phil, but I got chills about it.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. And it's one of the reasons I keep podcasting is this young man came up. There's a young woman from the local security community. I had her on my podcast. That was the episode he first listened to. He got introduced to it, and he said that he's always been introverted and socially awkward. And if it wasn't for the podcast, he wouldn't be able to do things like go to the conference. So it's just hearing stuff like that just keeps me going and trying to help people. And I think when we're helping this younger generation too, is we need to be gentle in the approach and not come off gatekeeping, because I've had students when I was teaching at Dallas College, I had a student that came up the beginning of the semester and said, I want to be as good of a hacker or pen tester as you, but I want to do it sooner. Can I do it? And I say, yeah, you just put in more time studying and you can get there. Comes out second weekend, do I have to read the textbook if I want to be a good pen tester? And so the only thing I did is that said, you're going to spend more time doing hands-on. I didn't want to discourage him, because if I told him handle things the way we did 20 or 30 years ago, saying, no, you really need to do everything, not take shortcuts, or you're not going to get in, I could have instilled some negative in his mind, and he could have had that self-doubt. But I didn't do that. And he turned around, I don't know how long it was, he actually landed a role as a pen tester, which really shocked me, because he wanted to be that level, but he wasn't showing that effort. But I think the real key is supporting without discouraging.
Yeah. Well, that
and to that point, and this goes back to what you guys were doing, and I just wanted to make this distinction. What you do with CYBR.SEC.CON, the CYBR.HAK.CAST, Phil, what you do as the hacker maker, I'm involved with B-Sides. I think those of us that are getting up there in our years that have this experience, we need to continue to give back and try and take those opportunities to try and bestow this knowledge whenever possible. So
100%.
Hats off to what you're doing, Michael, and what you're doing, Phil. And I'm grateful to what you guys do for the next generation. And I just want to point that out as well.
Well, appreciate you, brother. I mean, you're doing a lot there too. You're pushing a lot of stuff out. So we're all going to do it together. Because yeah, I don't want to be 80 and have the world blow up because some attacker was able to get in and do something crazy because the younger generation's not doing. I want to live a little bit,
And for those that
Darn
haven't
whippersnappers, stay off my internet.
For those that haven't been mentoring and trying to help the next generation, it's very rewarding. So once you get started doing it, it's kind of hard to give up. And that's kind of why I said that keeps me podcasting, because there's times I think, why do I keep doing this? I don't have to do this. And then someone comes up and shares a story like that, and it keeps me going.
It's addicting. It really is. I get chills every time. I've told you, I've had people come up and say they got a job because they were at the conference. I'm just like, oh man, that just makes me feel fantastic. I love it. So, well,
you guys are both, what's the right word? You're catalysts of change.
Phil, let's both do this. Pat ourselves on the.
Here, I'll give you both one.
No, I appreciate that. That's stuff that motivates me. Absolutely, in hearing that stuff. So I appreciate you. Well, guys, this has been fun, really fun, fantastic for a first episode. Len, thank you for joining us. Really, really appreciate it. Can't wait to do the screening. That is again on December 17th at the Regal Edwards Houston Marquee on Katy Freeway. Go sign up for it. And we also have a user group between now and then in November 20th. So you want to come out for that one as well, sign up. But I'm excited to do that with Len. Any parting thought, Len?
Don't give up. And that's for you and Phil and what you guys are going through with the transition from HUSEC to CYBR.SEC. Don't give up. To the people that are listening, the novices that we were just talking about, don't give up. There's always another opportunity tomorrow.
100% agree. I love it.
Same.
Phil,
great words of wisdom.
What are your parting thoughts, Phil?
Well, I'm going to say, Len, thanks for being our guest, and you really raised the bar our very first episode. So you really set the standard going forward for this podcast.
It's all down from here.
I've said it before, and this isn't meant to sound cocky, but God, I hate the people that I feel bad for the people that have to go on behind me. I do I do cause a scene. I'm not saying it's positive, but I create a scene one way or another.
One way or the other, positive or negative. People remember. I love it. It's always been positive for me, dude.
Appreciate you, Michael.
Yep. All right, everybody. Well, thank you for joining us on episode 54 of the CYBR.SEC.CAST and episode 1 of the CYBR.HAK.CAST. It's been a lot of fun. We're going to do a whole lot more of these, have some really cool guests on, and we will see you in a couple of weeks for episode 2, and it'll be all by itself. All right, everybody. See you next time.